We'll call the meeting to order at 3:30. Item number 2 is discuss and consider for approval proposed changes to the pay provisions policy. See the attachments. Ryan, do you want to start us off with this?
Yep, thank you. So as part of the whole process with the wage scale and policies that were affected, one of the major ones being the pay provisions administration for non-union policies. You should have in front of you a lined out version of what was, and then the proposed underlined with yellow highlights of what is proposed as far as how the structure, the new structure, as proposed, if passed, would be implemented.
And that's everything that's in the gray, and then what am I looking at?
Pay provisions, this one.
There you go.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yep. I don't know if you had a chance to read it the last couple of days, or I could walk through it. Go for it. No, Patrick.
Yeah, walk through it.
Sure. So,
Do you want to, if you have questions, we'll just stop you where we're at, yes?
yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
go ahead.
I believe previous to this, it had been approximately, I think it was 9 years since this was last updated. Best of my knowledge, there's others in the room that know better. You can see the position statement that there will be a wage schedule established with full paying employees at the market rate, including but not limited to the total compensation program of vacation, sick, or other paid leave taken into consideration when determining the pay levels and the grades. Down under number 4 policy, instead of every 3 to 4 years, which was original, we're proposing every 2 to 3 years to realign the wage schedule. Example would be we'd pull a couple positions from a couple of different departments every 2 to 3 years. Just do our own, not paying a consultant, see what comparable municipalities are paying those positions, and if we're within that market range.
I just have a question on 3.
Sure.
It seems like you're taking out the common council and the committee, and you're taking on that responsibility yourself. You wanna just explain?
It would all have to go to the HR committee.
Yep.
Anything to do with wages or setting wages or adjusting wages would have to be approved by HR and council.
Oh, cause it,
That's for
The way it-
adjustments not budgeted.
oh, okay.
This potential schedule obviously would be a plan, like the current scale we have would be essentially budgeted for.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the salary at new positions is something that HR has leeway by policy, that they can't go over market, they can't go up. I'm not sure what your latitude is by policy. It's like
4, I
step
believe.
1, 2, and 3
Mm-hmm.
is HR, like 4, 5, and 6 would have to come to the HR committee and approved by council.
That's not what it says in here. It says that it would be up to the department head and the HR resource director, human resources director,
What?
to get up to 6. And
What are you
then-
looking at?
Yeah, I'm just
That's,
saying.
that's down further.
Later, correct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I got a question outside of that. Brian, what data are you using to find the market rate?
These were adjusted in 2023, the beginning of 2023.
From what data set? Like, where's your market rate?
Oh, what
come from?
data?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you said what date. From, I think we had 40-some different municipalities when we did the Carlson Detman program.
Okay.
So anywhere from Kimberly to River Falls to Marshfield Point, Wausau, Clare. I think Beaver Dam was as far south. So that basic radius.
And you pulled the market rate would be the average of the 40 municipalities for each of these positions, or are you going on the high end? Where?
Not the average, but what the going rate for somebody who has worked in that position and has experience in that position for a certain amount of years, so they're not brand new green coming in off the street, would be the market rate.
And Carlson Detman did that, that was a company that the council approved hiring to do the wage.
That was a
kind-
wage study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still confused, Patrick, what number are you on?
I'm on 3, I just had one question, so.
On the second
Should-
page on number 3?
No, this one, number 3, first page, right here.
Number 3.
Where it says position statement.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the new step system that we're having is gonna make it easier to forecast and budget for the following year. Therefore, you're not going to need, to go through the committee or common council for an additional wage. Is that what, for adjustments?
No, that steps and yearly wage adjustments that will still have to come through council, and that'll be something council will decide whether it's a step plus a wage adjustment and what that is. So that'd be something that Ryan would bring, and matter of fact, we have to do it next month to do the yearly wage adjustment, and that'll come forward as it will every year after that to get approval.
Right. I think what this is saying, and Sue or Shane, Tim, help me with this, but I think what this is saying at the beginning, where it's now taking that, all recommendations for adjustments are to be made by the HR committee, finance committee for adjustments not budgeted, which that is still, and confirmed by the council. What we're trying to do is eliminate cases of a one-off, let's
I'd
call it
say
a one-off.
I
and-
come-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I agree, and I was guilty when I was HR chairman. An employee came in to have their wages adjusted and present an argument for why that adjustment needs to happen. Well, then obviously it happens and you get approval, but it ends up throwing off the internal equity with all the positions in other departments are off when you take one position and change it, and you don't do that with any of the other positions. And I think that's throwing our internal comparables off in a number of different classifications. And I don't think that should happen.
So you're taking that out. That was my question. We're not doing that anymore.
Correct.
Correct.
That's the intent, is to get rid of doing that, and this scale and the policy to say this is how people and individuals would move along, that's what the replacement would be for what you're talking about.
Okay, that's, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was confused at what you're asking.
Well, I think though, actually that human resource director should make an review, I mean, that's just basically been moved to 11. Common council may consider a general wage adjustment to be effective January 1 of each
Yeah.
year. This wage adjustment should then be built into the wage. It's rather than, I guess, thinking that the main part of this is that there's gonna be this wage schedule, and it was basically just moved to those employees who have reached the maximum step will continue to receive the general wage adjustment. So, I mean, I guess that line that was struck was about the COLA, basically. We used to call it COLA, and now that is referenced in basically
Right, okay.
11. But I think, agreeing with what's been said about that, basically, we wanna really stick to the schedule.
Right, yeah, we don't want
and-
those-
And have everything built in where there's not someone coming and saying, well, I want, this, I should be treated differently, or I'm not, so, but, yeah.
I think Tim had a question.
Oh, no.
Nope, we're good.
Okay. So, the other part of my question is, this would be easier, you have it in January 1st, that everybody is going to be moved. Is that already budgeted before January 1st? So it doesn't need to come to committee, so it already have gone through the process. Like if you're currently working
Every
for me-
year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like if you're working here.
Yep.
Let's trade positions. Well, you be somebody, I'll be somebody else. I'll be you. You be somebody else.
Okay.
If you worked here for 5 years, I know that you're gonna go up to the next step.
Yep.
During budget time, is that budgeted in, or is that gonna be a separate
No, when I
on
do my,
January first? Yeah, for the next year.
yeah, if I do HR's budget, I
Yeah.
look at the scale and be
Yeah.
like, that should be whatever it is, 2.5%, 3%.
Okay.
But
Go ahead,
Tim,
Tom.
Yeah, because currently we do have steps in the current system.
Yes.
And so if we know when someone's moving to the next step, and that's incorporated into their budget, labor line item, the wage line item, so.
Okay.
And then if, next month you decide to give non-union X percentage, Tim will build that into the budget, so then you'll know those all up. The budget will be updated, so at budget time, it will be approved at that point also.
Go ahead.
I mean, last time I tried to bring this up, didn't go too well, but I feel like this is I need to see what the budget proposed with this looks like versus the current
The cost.
policy we have in place, yeah. If you know that offhand, I mean, that would be helpful, but otherwise it's really hard to say, like, this is a whole pay schedule for the entire,
Here you go.
all the city employees.
So I'm gonna start, if I can say, thank you, Tim. He has put the budget, working on the budget aside, and he spent a lot of time, weekends and evenings, I do have mine, working on many, many spreadsheets to try to figure this out. And he can kind of explain it.
Okay, well, just, what I put together here is that, you know, based on, the proposed wage structure and how everyone advances through the steps, I kinda try to I did a 5-year projection on those costs, because obviously with the new proposed that a lot of people are advancing in steps year after year, because I think it's up until step 11, it's every 12 months, and then from 11 to 14, it's 18 months, and 15, 16 is 24 months. So I just kind of put together a cost analysis of what our current pay plan is, and what, you know, because there's certain people getting steps in there in that current one, and so what that cost is, and then also what the cost of the proposed wage scales can be. So if you look at 2024, you know, and I broke out, you know, you see a total cost for the proposed schedule for the employees that this would affect at $403,000, and then I broke that out into what that would look like with just what the built-in step increases are. So obviously, if this is approved, those are built-in wage increases that necessarily would not be approved each year. They're approved upon implementation of this plan. And then I said, just gave a look at a general wage increase. I just used what we got for 23 just as a starter of 3%. And so, and then you can compare that to what the current 2024 cost is. So theoretically, if this would be adopted and implemented on January 1, 2004, it'd be a cost of about $84,886. But then you can see as you go year after year for the 5 years, you know, that cost increases, because under our current structure, everyone's pretty much, once they reach step 6, they stop, they can't advance further, whereas under this new one, they can go all the way up to step 16. So you'll see those step increases increase year after year. So basically just looking at a 5-year, you know, projection of these costs, you know, it would be an overall additional cost of about $606,000. So.
Thank you. That's very helpful, and I think looking 5 years out, I mean, realistically, with wage changes even on the current plan, it is 600,000 more, but that's just the world we live in nowadays and competing, and this is perfect. This, by the way, this is exactly how I'd like to see it, so makes sense to me.
So Tim, I do have a question.
Sure.
When you did this, this is, when you did this, you're assuming that everybody that's here right now is here in 5 years. Because it's impossible to predict who's
Sure.
gonna be here, who's not gonna
Right.
be here. So this could possibly go down, but it shouldn't go up. Well, I mean, it could, but
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, well,
Worst case
it
scenario.
depends on what the position is, because a lot of times it's, you know, depending on the position, they might come in at, they might not start at step one. You know, they might be brought in right at market, depending on what the position is. But also remember is that under our current schedule, that happens too. That we have people at step 6, their replacement might be moved back to step 1, so.
Okay.
So whenever you have turnover, theoretically, there is usually some wage savings because they're starting at a lower step than what the person that left the organization was at. So it occurs under both scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I would just add, there's an associated cost with turnover that sometimes you can't put a dollar on unless you do an extensive study, so.
Well, Ryan, I think you kind of looked at that already.
Yeah, but,
And the number $40,000, attracting, training, and retaining comes to mind.
Over the course of.
yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say. So, when you look at this, it seems, I mean, at max, it would be 606 if everyone stayed, right?
Right, you know, and really, you know, you have to remember is that, you know, kind of with this new proposed schedule, you know, a lot of people are getting that 1.5% steps each year. I mean, there's a few that kind of, but the majority of the people are getting that 1.5. You know, and this factors in a 3% COLA. I shouldn't say COLA, I said it's a annual wage increase. So, but, you know, when you look at the affordability budget year over budget year, the council has flexibility in what that wage increase that is applied to the schedule. So theoretically, if you're saying we're looking at the budget, it's like, okay, we necessarily can't afford a 3%, you can apply a 2% or a 1%, which would bring that cost down. Because, you know, so you're right now, you look at it for a lot of the employees, it'd be a 4.5% increase, you know, for 2020, or, well, 2025, because 2024, we're just putting them in the nearest one closest to their present hourly rate. But in 2025, saying, you know, 4.5% is cost prohibitive for the budget, so maybe instead of, you know, a 3%, you do a 2%, so then theoretically, with the step plus 2%, it's a 3.5% wage increase. So there is flexibility within controlling some of the costs in here. The only costs that are really locked in is the built-in step increases.
That's what Portage County does. They kind of do that hybrid approach. They're taking step plus whatever wage adjustment they're looking to make to get that at the end. And market, you know, as we were talking today, market is really year over year, like you were saying too, is, you know, 1 year market might be this, and then all of a sudden there might be a flood, and now all of a sudden market's this, and so, or there's really no employees, and so the market's even higher for that job classification. So that kind of is also shifting every year and kind of adjusting, and that's why I think having that every 2 to 3 years, kind of looking at, you know, taking jobs and kind of evaluating them to see what the market is at that time.
Yeah, with wage studies. In the private sector, in regards to the flexibility, oftentimes every year you'll see if you are on a step program like this, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but you'll get your cost of living increase plus your step. So I think that's where our flexibility would come, whether it's
Yep.
cost prohibitive to the budget or not.
Right.
Tim?
Well, I was just gonna say with the 2 to 3 year market analysis, I think it's very important though that we establish what our comparables are.
Right.
So that every time we do that, it's consistent as opposed to, you know, this time we use these comparables and the next time we use these, you know, we kind of know what municipalities are similar to us.
Right.
And it's establishing those so it's consistent year over year so that your market adjustments aren't kind of all over the place because you use different comparables. Because we all know you can always take and manipulate data based on different comparables and variables, so.
So I think as we were going through this, that was one of the things when they came in with their 40 communities that they used this for comps. A lot of them are in the southern part of the state. I think there were some in the eastern and western part of the state that those aren't necessarily good comps for our area. I think we've discussed potential of Point, Marshfield, Wausau, things kind of in central Wisconsin, so it's more apples to apples comparison. So, Shane, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and Ryan gets requests like, hey, what do you pay this classification of employee? And that's exactly what we need to do on a regular basis. And whether it get on a cycle every couple of years so every year you're doing some group, just kind of just testing the waters with, like you said, those municipalities, because that's, you know, the most fairest and most accurate of what we're paying in central Wisconsin.
I think that's twofold. it depends on if you're in talent acquisition and you're trying to pull from outside central Wisconsin, or if we're just, if we are looking at, for current employees, those who have roots in Rapids, obviously the cost of living is pretty low here. So comparatively to Western and Eastern, they're gonna get quite the, so.
Yeah.
Well, but I think
I don't
we've
know.
seen, just recently, the police chief's position, there's probably a couple others that would come to mind if I thought about it, but, I think when people come here, they take all those things into consideration.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's hard because anybody that comes from outside the area they look at the dollar. They don't all the time always roll up in all the roll ups. You know, it's like, what am I going to get for a paycheck? But that's some of Ryan's salesmanship he has to do is that he kind of has to we get this many weeks of vacation, but you get this much personal time, you get this much sick time, and trying to really highlight all the different pieces of that benefit package.
Right.
Patrick, any thoughts?
If you wanna, okay, you had touched on the, possibly it could be lower because of turnover. If you take like, the semi-skilled operators in the streets, those are all right in a row there, and they're way past the step
Mhm.
6.
Yep.
And I don't know if they've all worked here. I think that's 12 years or 13 and a half years. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 12 years. it would
Okay.
be. I don't know. I mean, that would be a pretty big to hire a new person and then.
Yeah, a lot of those are from, that's a carryover from the union wage scale. So, and that's why they're all at the same, because end load operator makes this much money, and so that's how and so this eventually, as that rotates, like you said, they'll start separating it out that a new end load operator will be much lower than a more experienced end load operator. But yeah, when you see those big lines, those are all carryovers from the union wage scale that it was just one fixed dollar amount.
And another thing on there, so where those rates currently are falling now is just what their current rate is.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they've been here 12 years. Right? When you were counting, you said something about 12 years and you kind of work backwards. They could have been here 5 years in the old scale, and based on this new scale, and when we redid the reclassifications and restructuring, that's just where they fall. So for a current employee, where they land doesn't necessarily have to do with how many years the employee's been here.
Right.
Did I say?
Yeah, that's correct, because what they did is they took whatever they make and they put it in that graph at the same wage without going lower. So, and that's why they're all the same though, is because that's a carryover from the union wage scale.
But what I'm asking is when you hire somebody new, are they gonna start out at step 1?
Yes.
Which is $5 less per hour.
Correct.
And you'll see, yeah, that's a great question and a great point, and that is addressed in the policy. Assuming that somebody comes in off that we'll call them inexperienced or green, okay? So they come in and they've never done this job, no experience in that job, position, industry whatsoever. They're gonna be grade whatever it is for that position, step number 1.
But if you come in with 10 years of experience in the private sector, you're gonna maybe not come in at a 1, maybe come in at a 3 or a 4, somewhere around there, depends on the experience level.
And that's where I think Paul has a little discretion, Ryan has a little discretion. I think if it goes above that, then it comes back to this committee.
Yep,
So,
correct.
but they do have a little discretion in that.
Okay, so say the people that are here that are currently, take like somebody that would be a CFO that's worked here for 20 plus years, but they're at the 100%. I mean, shouldn't they be further down in the steps?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that be fair?
Theoretically, yes, and we've gone round and round, not round and round, we've had
Right.
discussions at length about the best and easiest, fastest, and fairest way to make it equitable for everybody.
I don't think we can right the ship in this one time. You know, you're talking about a history that's been put here, and this is what we ended up with. Ideally, if I was here 20 years, would I be at step 16 and at the top of the market? In the ideal world, I'd say yes, but I don't think financially it's feasible to kind of right the ship from what we inherited. And all we can do is make it better going forward from this point. And then every new hire that brought in is gonna start correcting this whole process. But yes, I do agree, you know, it's kind of unfair, but how do you make that up, you know? And I think correcting it now, by opening up the steps so they can move is a bonus, and B, that the new hires coming in are gonna be part of that process. But we've gone around and around about that internally too, is, you know, how's that fair? We have, I'll bring it up, but if you look at the city engineer position in there, you know, he's been here quite a long time and he's not even at market. And there's other positions like that, and there's positions in there that are under market because they are new hires. And how do you write all that, or do you can't write some of them and not all of them? So I think just having that ability, like that position that I just brought up, just having that ability to be able to move, he's happy with, you know, versus being where he's at. But I don't think it's possible to correct all those wrongs. I hate to say wrongs, but just inequities.
Because theoretically, you're correct.
Yes.
Let's go back, we'll go back to your first example. And you said CFO, but we'll go finance, right? Currently, our finance been here long time. Fire chief and chief of police, not so long. And if you look where we're falling, somewhat similar. In a perfect world, I think you all agree, you know, that would go to the far end. But then you have the other instance that the mayor just mentioned, and then you do that, and then
Who do you do it for and not, or do you do everybody? And then Tim hasn't probably figured out that number, but I think if I remember Carlson Detman, it was like over $1 million to try to write all those positions.
So they did that.
They did that a long time ago in one of their presentations, yeah.
the very first one. I
Kind of
think
initially, you know.
We told them to go back to the drawing board. Jay.
With increases and decreases, or just with just increases?
I think it was
It's
just
just
the
increase.
increases.
Yeah.
So in that example, use the finance for an example. I think they moved him up that position up, and the rest they left where they were at that level. But yeah, and it came back at some crazy dollar amount that it just wasn't, probably not affordable, so.
Unfortunately.
So how can it be that high with the first study, but we're looking at 606,000 over 5 years through the
Because
steps?
everyone's placed that where they're at currently
Right.
now, for
They're
the most
not.
part.
They're not corrected.
Yeah, the 2024 is basically you're placed in this, your grade, you're placed in the step nearest to your current hourly wage without it being less.
Right.
Okay.
So for some, it's a little amount, some they shiver, but it's not a very large number. Well, you can say it's 153,000.
Right.
That step, and that's where placing everyone in that step, and that's what the cost of that is.
Yeah.
Because everyone's theoretically gonna get a little step increase in 2024 if it's implemented in the current model, you know, and so that's what it is. So, but what they're saying is when Carlson Detman did this, if you did it, you know, because theoretically it was the step 7 through 16 was kind of supposed to be, you know, recognize tenure and longevity and things like that. Well then, you know, if you took everyone and placed them where they should be based on their years of service, you get a very large jump in, you know, you're talking multiple steps, not just one. So it could be, for some, it could be 8%, 10%, and that's where that figure added up.
But this maxes out and doesn't go any further than 115% of market rate.
Correct.
And everybody can potentially hit that,
Correct.
depending on what step they're at, if they're at the control point in 2 years.
Nope.
No.
No?
So if you, let's do.
Or
just
these are steps, so they're not, it's not total.
we can walk through it quick, but if you just
I
do
got
a
it.
quick example, and if I start at step 1, it's gonna take me 19 years to get to step 16. If you go by 6 months, 6 months, then 12 months, and the 18 months, and then the 24 months, it's 19 years before a brand new employee starting in step 1. So then you just subtract that off. If I started at the market, which will be less than less than market, it's still gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
I got it.
Yeah.
But if
Get
someone's
over 12
coming
years.
from outside, they don't have any experience, they're step 1, but everybody's getting brought up to market rate, control point. If they do have experience, they could get brought in at that.
Yep.
And then each of these is intervals. It's not a cumulative 24
Right.
months. I got
And,
it.
and also the steps, when they're brought at step one through 6, it's a 3% step increase. So that kind of recognizing that when they're getting here, as they're getting experience, so they accelerate a little bit faster to get to step 6. And above step 6, then they're 1.5% steps.
Yep.
I noticed we have, well, I guess you guys have, so like the fire department, battalion chief, fire chief, those guys, and chief of police, those guys are all outside the union, is that,
Correct.
that's why
Yeah,
they're.
this is
These are all non-union, right?
Yeah, this doesn't include any union wages or costs.
They negotiate separately. But, you know,
The other nice part to the structure, and I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but prior to this, if this goes, engineering, I think it was the old asset contract, but you had street department and
Oh, yeah.
wastewater and engineering kind of had all different scales of how they were paid within their departments. This brings all non-union positions under one scale,
mhm.
if that makes.
Yeah.
I just think somebody under market, I mean, and if they've been here a long time, like longevity should count for something. So,
Do you wanna move them up?
I was gonna
I
say,
don't think
would be
anybody will complain.
no, really, I think that they should be placed with the years of service. So if they're way down here on the right side, but they've only been here a year, I think that should change. Because, like you said, a new hire is it's gonna take them 19 years to get there.
There's a couple positions in there that I would think it would be more than fair to at least make them market, because they've been here for a dozen years, 10 years. And I've spoken to, you know, one individual, he knows he's gonna go quicker through the steps because he's lower, but he's still bad that you feel bad because he should be at market at least, you know?
Correct.
And I think there's a couple in there that are, obviously, there's a bunch in there because they are new employees and that's where they belong, but we do have some that are not at market yet. And I don't know exactly how many there are, but there's only a few, you know, and would I advocate that they be placed at market? Absolutely.
I'm concerned with the cost on that idea.
I understand, but to me, it just doesn't seem right that somebody could just leave and then reapply and they would start out making more than what they were.
Not necessarily.
Well, okay, I understand that they would go back to step 1, 2, or 3, but they've already had the experience, obviously, because they worked here for 12 years, but yet they're still under year 5.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I'd say there's like maybe 2 or 3 positions in there that have been here, have tenure, that are under market. You know, and I don't think that cost would be that large to bring them to market at least, which would be fair, you know, in that sense. But but there's a lot of people that on the right side of the scale that are not in the right places either, so do you correct all those also? I just think it'd be,
I think they should be corrected based on the years that they've been here. If we're gonna go to this scale, everybody should be based upon the years, experience, and where they should be, to be fair across the board. Because I don't think that, bringing a new guy in that gets hired in 6 months and he gets paid $5 less than everybody else just because he's a new guy, and it'll take him 12 years to get to somebody that was.
But that's all part of he's new here, regardless if he's got 50 years' experience doing something, there's still gonna be, how do we do things? I mean, there's gonna be some training. And again, those guys that come in at the bottom are gonna move pretty quick.
I would also add, I mean, some of what you described sounds like a union or a union contract. I think Tom said this in a meeting recently, but, you know, certain departments in the city have actually chosen to decertify. I wouldn't be comfortable with that for what you're describing for financial reasons, and I think if they wanna do that, that's of their own right, but this seems more in line with, I think, where we need to be with all employees that aren't unionized.
I think, Patrick, after 2 years of back and forth and having these
I
discussions.
understand that this has been a lot of work.
Right, and we have discussed these things, I think. Sue, Ryan, Shane, they can all tell you that. I mean, do we do this? Do we not do this? I guess the way I look at this is the people that are coming in are gonna be in the system, they're gonna benefit from the system. The people that are in the system now, some of them might gain a little advantage, some of them will never see the full benefit of this, and unfortunately you have to start someplace, and this is where we're starting, or we're recommending where we start, so.
yeah, my quick look through there, I saw 3 probably positions that are below market that I think should be at market.
What are they?
It was, for me, looking at, I think, city engineer, is below, they're below market, and they've been here a while. And then, the assistant city engineer, the parks, well, oh, that's fine. And then there was one more, what was it?
Back in the original presentation, community development had been mentioned.
That's what I think it was.
But have they been in that position for a
For,
long time?
yeah.
No.
Or, community,
Right, I mean,
oh, I thought you were talking about the development director,
Yeah.
cause that's below market, and he's been, oh no, he's been here long. It's been 5
for
or 5.
Probably, yeah, was it 4? No.
2020,
Before me,
19.
19.
Yeah, so probably 4.
Those kind of ish, I think. But yeah, you know, we've talked all at length about it, you know, what's fair, is it fair to move some and not others, is it fair, we've even said, well, if they're 10 years, do you move them, or try to come up with a year, or, you know, I think, yeah, in a perfect world, yeah, it would be great to move everybody, but I don't know if financially is possible.
Have you talked to these people? These positions?
One of them I have.
I think, so when we did this, one of the last things we did was we brought every department in.
Yes.
Every department head in, and that was part of the conversation, and I don't, I remember one saying specifically that I'm happy where I'm at, and
I know one, yeah, the one that I'm advocating, not, I guess, talking about is, you know, he's under market, he's been here a while, but he's just happy that he can move, you know, that he's not at this, knowing that he's under market, and he's satisfied. He's satisfied with leaving it as it is also, so he's just happy that the steps will be opened up and they can progress through it.
Sue, do you have anything you wanna add?
personally feel that the second half of the schedule where we have some 18-month and 24 months in order to move, I think that's, I mean, those are people that have been here some time, and for them to have to wait 2 years for a raise, I guess I think that's kind of a long time to move in a step, especially, like I said, those are the people that, you know, have been here maybe 8-10 years, plus the people, the current employees who aren't getting any credit maybe for their longevity, are gonna get stuck maybe waiting 2 years to move, when they're the ones that ideally, like you said, if we had the money, would probably be maxed out now, and so having them wait 1.5 years or 2 years, you know, to move in a step, but I mean, it's all just a matter of, you know, how many steps do you want, and then how is that divided up in the steps past the control point in terms of the percentage raise, and so, you know, it can all be probably manipulated to be whatever you want, but I guess I think 19 years is a long time. I think we originally were thinking 16 years to get to the end, so I don't know, at the end that kinda got flattened out to more time at the end, but I mean, I know people have a different opinion on that, so, but I just, yeah, I guess just thinking of the people that are in the schedule now that might have to wait 2 years to even move in a step when they're been here for 20 years.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, you know, waiting 2 years for a step, and granted, would be a cost of living perhaps in those years, but those people at least would get that. But I guess that's my only, and then the other point about me, it would be great to somehow recognize the current employees, and put them where they would be if this would have been. And I don't know if that's, you know, I don't think that's been costed out, and it probably would be expensive, but I mean, you're gonna wait 19 years to really get to where everybody is, you know, that started and is going through the whole thing, and to the extent that, you know, I guess the employees that have been here, that you might come up with something to, and this doesn't apply to me, so I'm not advocating for myself, but just for others. But, you know, where do you draw that line of, you know, you've been here 20 years, and maybe you should be put at least a step 15, let's say, or, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's great for new employees, it's great for the newer employees.
Yes.
It's great that all employees are at least moving in steps, hopefully, you know, instead of being stuck at the control point. So, you know, those are all good things, but I think it just, probably the cost of it is not allowing it to probably be implemented fairly to the employees that we have now. And, you know, maybe it is looking at some of those one-offs and moving them, or maybe looking at what the cost is to move. I'm sure, I know the numbers that Carlson Devlin first ran to say if we do this, it would be this amount. I mean, that's not this schedule,
No.
right? So
No.
it would have to be a whole new,
Correct.
maybe Tim will pull out a piece of paper and say, here!
I've not done that.
Nor does he want to.
Yeah, and it, you know, but,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I understand your guys' points, I do. I just keep going back to this, and I mean, we're already gonna take a hit in the budget. We're gonna have these discussions coming up here. If it was a private foundation and we were working off some type of different funding system and budget process, I mean, that would make a lot more sense to me to go that route, but I think a lot of time has went into this, and this really paints a clear picture of, I mean, we're already gonna have to find some areas to even do this, so to take it a step further, I mean, we gotta pay attention to where we're at with the rest of what goes on with the costs of things we do in the city and potential inflation going forward, and we take out debt and all that stuff. So I think a lot of time has went into this. I'll make a motion to approve the proposed changes to the pay provisions policy.
Patrick?
Say I worked for a working for Paul as a semi-skilled operator. I just started last year. So I'm at year 12 on this schedule. When, okay, so would that be frozen? You would still get that cost of living, everybody calls it cost of living. Cost of
Annual wage.
You would, yeah, you would still get that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Assuming
frozen.
it's proved, I mean, that's gonna be a year-to-year thing, yeah.
You're in step
It's never
12.
not approved. You put anything in front of the council, they approve it.
That's correct. Come on.
He's
So-
right.
Unless it makes sense. So, what I'm saying is, would that wage be frozen until I got to
No.
year 12?
No.
I mean, wouldn't that make sense?
Well, I think when we started this process, we came up with and it's always the biggest controversy in wage studies, freezing. And so we kind of went into this with the discussion that we're not gonna freeze any employee. Just because I think that's probably a greater detriment to the process, to everything that's gone on here, that I don't think it's healthy because, yeah, it's not their fault that they were paid this amount over. And that's the other correction on the bottom side. When they decide to retire and leave, it'll be, the next person will come in at a 1. And so, yeah, we're not moving people up, we're not moving people down. It's just the cost of having the system we had, which I didn't think was the best system, to the ideal system, which you're talking about, is bring everybody to where they need to be. And to me, this was a good compromise. That is just, it is what it is now. People are just plotted where they're plotted in the graph, and they'll start moving from that point on. Whether they're I hate to say overpaid, but not paid according to the market rate of their job for their years of service. That's just kind of part of the whole, I think, pain of the whole thing.
And we learned from a neighboring community
Yeah.
that I think over 10 years, they tried with the freezing and putting
Mhm.
people appropriately where
Mhm.
a consultant told them to, and that blew up. That's a good way to explain it. They've done 2 more since then to try to right the ship of the fallout and blowback from that initial moving people backwards, the freezing. So taking that into account, watching what happened, we tried to learn from that and be like, how can we best talk about all these topics and try to land somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess
space
if you're
for
looking
everybody.
to maybe get people to start over at step 1, is a good way is maybe to freeze them, because they'll probably not stick around, would be my concern. Knowing that they're not gonna get a pay raise.
And I think another organization has seen that
Yeah.
with the turnover.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying this would be a way to get it more, we would be rewarding the people that have been here for a long time versus me, a new hire, just started. I mean,
I don't think we have any new hires that are like at a 12-year rate though. Especially Ryan, since in the last 2 years, he's been very cognizant of this, and that's what he's been kind of in his mind, kind of plotting people anyways. So you don't have a 2-year employee at 14 years kind of thing. I don't know, do we?
What's that?
That's my common labor. What are our common laborers at?
2774. I didn't hear what your
Oh, yeah.
question or comment was.
My comment was is that we have our common laborers in their current wage scale are at like step 7 or step 8, I thought.
But that was a starting wage.
Right.
So, we didn't change the starting wage.
No, I know.
That's why they're placed there though.
Right, but that's what, I guess, Jay, if I can say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's just what the scary part is about us, is that we just hired 3 people in the last 2 years, and we had less than 40 applicants for those 3 positions at $27.74 or whatever you said the hourly rate is. We're gonna cut that back down to $14,996 being the entry level number one,
Mm-hmm.
are we gonna get, what are we gonna get? You know, I mean, because the communities that we said that we're gonna compare ourselves to have been trying to get to what we are for the last 3 years. You know, and I have conversations with my counterparts there every single year, and they're like, well, we're working on trying to get to that level, cause I said, well, this is where we are now, but we're going backwards and it's not gonna be anywhere near this, and they're like, oh shoot, really? Because they're having a hard time attracting people in Wausau. There was just an article on the TV last winter, where Wausau wasn't able to hire people and have all of their plow routes covered. You know, because at the rate that they're paying, they're not able to attract. You know, so hopefully we don't have that issue.
But isn't that where your market adjustments, where you're looking at those positions, and so if the market changes and those positions are going, that step one's gonna be brought, that grade or that grade is gonna be brought back up to the market,
Oh, agreed.
so.
Well, but like I said, my personal opinion is that group is going backwards. You know, and that's what's scary is if I'm getting 40 people for 3 positions and 40 people, you know, I once told an alderman, I'm like, there's a difference between 40 people and 40 qualified people. You know, we've had a mechanic position open that we've been advertising for almost 2 months. And we've had 5 people apply, and 2 of them met the qualifications, and another one had the work experience to be able to do it. You know, so.
Yeah, I agree with Paul, but you know, right now, people in his department, they shift pay, depends on what they're doing, and this will flatten it out to, this is your wage no matter what you're doing. And I talked to Paul about how many common laborers do we really have or need, because our common laborers do step up to do other things, and it's like, do we really need to bring in and hire people as common laborers? We should, in my opinion, we should just hire everybody at a semi-skilled level, because ultimately, that's where they're gonna be. And a lot of times those common laborers are getting paid semi-skilled wages.
They're the same skill.
Oh, are they?
So they're not gonna do it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mean to-
Darn it, I'm glad you.
So, but just so you know, within this policy, so if, let's say you hire a young person right out of high school, no experience, they're coming in at $21.96. Between you and Ryan, you have the ability to set them at the control point, which is $25.57. So if you have somebody that has 4 or 5 years of experience, just between the two of you, you can bring them up to that $25.57.
I understand that, but we're still $5,000 less than what an employee is making that we just hired a month ago.
What,
You know, and that's what I'm saying is if we're having at whatever that is, 40 or $54,000 a year, if we're having a hard time attracting people at that scale, are we gonna be able to, that's what my question, and nobody can answer that, right? I mean, we can only try it. But, you know, if Wausau is having a hard time at $48,000 a year getting somebody to come in to take that job, full-time job with benefits, you know, are we gonna have, you know, where is that point? You know, nobody knows.
Jay,
Yes, sir.
I made a motion for item 2,
Yes.
and we've mostly been discussing item 3.
Well,
So I don't know what,
Sorry.
no, it's all right, we've
Well,
all been doing it.
It all kind of goes hand in hand.
So should I change my motion to include both of them?
Oh,
And
we can do them one at a
dispose
time.
of both items, or?
Does anybody have, Patrick, do you have anything left on item 2?
Just on the number 3 on the second page would be, oh no, I'm sorry, it's E, 2E. If you want to add in the common council at the end of that too.
For 2,
2E. And what you changed, where it says was recommendations from HR manager and mayor and approval of the HR committee, it should also have council put in there just for,
It would go to council.
It would
just
go to
because it's
council.
on the HR committee.
I understand that.
Just don't we have
just say it's like special.
Right, so I'm just saying, I think it's just, you know, like I said, whenever it comes to policies, making this clear is.
Right, because currently, it doesn't happen that way.
Oh, so you
This would
don't
ju-
wanna have it go to council?
It doesn't currently. Currently, it just goes to only with advance approval of the HR committee. This is expanding it to HR committee, mayor, and HR manager.
But we could, I mean,
But it was
anything
still-
that's on an
It's still
agenda,
the
Yeah.
council, yeah.
anything that's on an agenda, as we
Goes to
learn,
council,
we can
correct.
pull out and
Right.
change however, so I mean, essentially it does. But I can add that, I'll keep my motion as is though, cause I think it's appropriate. Just-
Patrick?
You're fine with this, Paul? I know that you guys have all talked about this, you've thought it through, you've seen this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive things to it, you know, I mean, I think it was 4 years ago, I asked for myself personally to have the possibility to have a step, you know, because we were frozen at step 6 or whatever. And yeah.
That's item 3. No, I'm just trying to
Well, no, they
get through
both
item
go
2
together.
here. They will, but I made a
Pay
motion for item
policies-
2.
The pay policy sets up a wage schedule, so then you're agreeing on exactly what the wage schedule is, so yeah, they're kind of the same.
Alright, I'll second the motion.
You wanna remake the motion, and before you do that, Dennis or Dean, anything you wanna add?
What do you want the motion?
It's your motion, you make it.
Well, I'm reading, I mean, I made a motion to approve the proposed changes to the pay provisions policy. That's the motion. The next item
We'll do them separately since they're
is the
separate.
wage schedule,
Yep, we'll
yeah.
do them separately since they're separate items.
Right.
Patrick, did you?
I'll second it, yeah.
There's a motion on the floor, and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, discuss and consider for approval a new wage schedule to be effective January 1st, 2024, contingent upon budget approval. Attachments forthcoming. I think we've had this discussion already, so I will make a motion to discuss, or to approve the new wage schedule being effective January 1st, 2024, contingent upon budget approval.
Second.
There's a motion on the
I just
floor,
have a
second.
question for
Go
Tim.
ahead.
I know that you guys have been working on this a lot, and, you put a lot of time into it. Is there any changes or anything like that? Are you fine with what we have?
As far as.
Have you thought of any changes that might be positive that?
You know, like I said, I think in a perfect world, you would recognize everyone for where they should be and ultimately do that. I mean, I didn't cost it out, but I think it would be one of those things where, you know, what would that cost be and is it really feasible to do that? You know, so, but, I mean, I think really what we're doing is that we're just looking at this prospectively. You know, and we can't change what was done, you know, it's kind of a thing, and it's just saying, you gotta start somewhere. You know, sometimes it's like whenever, it's like with anything, right? You know, when we get, I'll use an example, we got rid of special assessments, right? You know, there are people that just paid theirs off,
Yeah.
and then now the next block over, they don't have to pay. I mean, whenever you make a, you know, kind of a change, a major change like this, you know, it's just, it's very, very hard to make it fair and equitable for every single person. You know, there's always usually something that's, you know, just not, you know, like I said, I haven't costed out what it would be to put everyone in there.
I think Ryan said it at the beginning. I think initially with Carlson, that was one of the first things they did, and it was $1 million or over $1 million.
But that was nothing compared to what this schedule is now.
That's
and where
true.
people
Oh, just,
are. I
everybody
mean,
keep in mind, this and this will change over time based on wage studies. So it's not forever. If the market goes up, the control point goes up. So if we wanna take up if a policy, we're gonna do wage studies every 3 years or whatever it be, I think we can do that. I think it would be responsible
It's already in the
it's in there, right, so I wouldn't, you know, be too set on this, cause it's gonna change as the market changes, just like pay schedules do a lot in the private sector. I think we're just really getting in alignment, and this will be what we start with. But when I think about this and what the market rate is gonna change, you know, I'd love to say comfortably we're at a max of 606,000 in 5 years. But if the market changes, which it will, and it'll go up, we're at more. So I think it's important for employees to know that too, is that the wages are being looked at. It is in the policy to do a wage study every 3 years. So you can look at this right now, but it's gonna change. And it's gonna go up because it really doesn't trend down much, depending on position. But
But I think I think the question is the current employees and the placement of employees, and
Right.
that's not gonna change once you do that this week, right? You're not gonna allow people to come in and start moving all over. You're just gonna populate the steps and move people in their steps, and so this is really the only opportunity to address that. The equity amongst the current employees and future employees and whatever. I mean, I think that's more the issue, in terms of where people should be placed. And I think once they're placed, the whole idea is that we're
Yes.
we're not
You're
moving
staying.
people,
Yeah.
right? Unless, I guess, never say never, but.
Would it make sense to have, okay, so we have this in place, but for the people that have been here for 10 or 12 years that are still on year 4 or 5, would it make sense to decrease the amount of time that it would take for them to move up a step so that you could get from step 5 to the end in a shorter period than another 15 years? Like, could we do 5 years or 7.5? Could we make it in half? Like, because then we're showing the employees that we do value them, value their longevity, and they're able to get to where they really should be in a quicker time that they've already put in. But it would be quicker than a new employee starting out getting to the end.
Can I add to that? I mean, really, what you're talking about a lot are almost like union policies. If you look at like the private sector, when they do similar things, I mean, this is just the way it goes. Yeah, I've sat in companies where my entire department's wage scale changes. We go from salary to hourly or back and forth, and it can benefit you one way or another, but that's just the way the market determines it and where you're at. I think there's other ways to incentivize, and I've seen these before too. Those who have longevity in bonuses. I'm sure you're familiar with this. So you get a bonus based on how long you've been there, when it makes sense financially. I mean, I'm sure in a private company it's got to be approved by the board, and here it would be by the council. But you can do things to reward people for their longevity besides, going away from the step scale. So we could take that up, but
We still have employees, I don't know about police and fire, but I think there's some in DPW that still get longevity, is that correct, Tim? Like 4 left?
I think it's pretty much been disappearing.
So it's what, 10 or 12 years ago that probably went away?
Yeah.
And then the individuals that were left in it that were eligible were kind of grandfathered in or given a choice.
Yeah.
I think it was
Personal
some
days
personal
or
days or longevity.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that were left, so.
and I think that's always something we could consider. It doesn't have to be a policy, it could be a yearly basis based on what's in the general fund and whatever council's in place wants to think, but we have to move towards something like this, and we can't make up and pay for past mistakes, because as relevant as this discussion is right now, and I understand what you're saying, we're about to talk about the budget shortly here, and I think we just need to get to this so that we're in the right place, and if we need to change it, once we get a better picture of what we're looking like as a whole city budget-wise, I guess we could talk about changing it, but
I guess-
this has been vetted, in my opinion, pretty well.
So my question was for Tim, do you think that would be a fair thing to do? To get people to their step that they really belong in, as well as rewarding the longevity they've been here?
You mean shortening up the time to
Correct.
get there? Well, I mean, I think, you know, I think for current employees, yeah, I guess that would be more fair because then they're getting to where they would be if they were truly, you know, recognized for their longevity and placed in that. But then for new employees,
They would just be regular.
oh, so you're saying having two different wage or two different schedules?
Just
step?
for people that have been here
Right, so
that
you-
are behind.
So you basically have to create another wage thing for this group of employees and then.
People that are already here. I don't think that would be that difficult.
Well, I think you would just, wouldn't you just have the same schedule, but move
Yeah.
those employees forward?
Correct.
You should move them right away.
Yeah, not have to, right,
Well-
just recognize that, right.
No, but I think what you're saying is that instead of like 18 months, it'd be 12 months or 6
or
months.
9 months or.
Right, so I think he's saying change the actual time between steps
So that
for
you're spreading it
certain
out
employees
over
and
many
then-
years, you're not taking a big hit right away, you're not gonna move them up, it would, we'd be recognizing the value that they have here and be working towards,
Yeah.
where they really should be.
So you'd almost have to identify specifically and grandfather.
What
those
about the
positions.
people that are over that you brought up before then? If you're moving one
I
group.
think they should be frozen, really.
I was gonna
but,
say, if
I
you're
mean,
moving one group, what about the other? And that's
I'm
why.
not saying, you wouldn't obviously take them back.
Right.
They would just be on the regular, if it's 18 months here, it would take it 18 months till they move up a step.
So they're not frozen then.
Correct.
So
Well,
you're gonna push a group head and you're gonna leave a group that's ahead.
We're getting them to where they should
But-
faster.
But just so I understand, so you wanna move that group up, the group that's behind, to where they should be quicker.
Correct.
The group that's where maybe over market, keep them on this schedule, they'll still continue to move. I think that's fair enough.
Now, I think I heard two different things, so just so I wanna be clear on this. You said that are behind. Definition of behind is years of service and you're not at a certain step.
Correct.
Yet, based off the proposed, so if, okay.
So what are you basing your years of service off of? Years of service as an employee of the city or years of service in a pay scale?
Right, cause different employees start at one and
Because
then they go
might have an
to
employee that's been
another.
here for 20 years that was a truck driver for 15 years and now he's an equipment operator, but he's only been an equipment operator for 4 years.
Right.
You know,
So he's really not a 20-year employee or a 15-year employee or a 20-year employee.
but
No,
according to
he is
this-
a 20-year employee, he's just not in that classification, and
Right.
now I think we're just gonna make this so complicated.
Yes,
If
that's
you're
all
in
I-
that classification,
tenured.
that's your claim.
And the number of years employed.
Yeah.
Because-
Because I think that's, sorry, but I think that's kind of one of the things that you're trying to do, except for you have, you know, much like myself, I've been with the city for 16 years, but I've only been in this position for 4 years. You know, so you don't look at me on the scale as being a 16-year employee. You go from where I was as a supervisor to where I would fall in my new pay scale or whatever, and I may not fall, you know, at the market value because I haven't been in that position for that time period.
So you'd have to look at every employee, every position, how long they've been in that position, and then see where they are.
Tim has tons of time.
If you wanna get the budget done this year.
I just think it would be nice to recognize the employees. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying,
Yeah.
and this would be a way to help them, get to where they actually should be on the scale.
So, I guess for me, would that be a project, like a next year project? Could that be looked at next year to see about writing that part of it and then seeing costs associated with moving them at that point.
I thought that's what we were figuring out now, right? Sue is like kinda.
Yeah, I'm just looking out for Tim's time, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, unless I could get another one of
That was-
these.
I was just curious.
I know, but I'm just, I know he's knee deep in the budget, and he put the budget aside to, you know, do a lot of work on this, and if Tim says, I got plenty of time, I'll get her done, that's one thing, but I know he's, he's buried, honestly, he's, and he's not gonna say it, but you're busy in the
And
budget.
Paul brings up really good questions, so, and examples.
So what if instead of extremely complicating it, you know, like us, we're going from, I think, 6 pay scales down to 4.
Yeah.
If you know, we're going from what our hourly rate is now to where it falls into the scale. If I have an employee that has been there for less than 10 years, he goes across at that level. If I've had an employee that's been here longer than 10 years, he goes a step above that to recognize his longevity versus.
Yeah,
So you give him a step for
yeah.
after 10 years.
That's.
Something like that would be
It
simple
doesn't,
too.
something simple, you know, it recognizes the fact that the employee has been here for whatever year you pick, instead of them, you know, cause that was always the thing that I struggled with, is that I had an employee that did the job for 20 years and a person that did it for 5 years, and they're making the same exact pay scale. You know, unless you have the intestinal fortitude to want it to be better, you know, which, why, you know, that's what you're hopeful for, you know, but,
That's a good idea.
to me, it's a simple solution. You could look at it to make it more complicated next year for 2025 or whatever, but they're at least recognizing, you know, a time period,
I
that
think 10
they've
years
been
is
here,
good.
you know, so.
I
10
think
years
that's
is a good idea. And you just get bumped step kind of recognition.
So are you thinking for this right now, or is this gonna be something, I mean, this is gonna be looked at again over and over and over again.
It is, I just
No,
think we should.
That's not the idea.
No, every 2 days, we've got it
We're doing
written
it
in the
right now.
Oh, every
policy, so-
years, yeah.
You're right, so,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
it's not, no, you're not gonna look at it every 6 months, and you're not gonna have Ryan come in and saying, hey, I need a bump, and, I mean, that's what we did this to eliminate that. But it's gonna be looked at again, and that's part of our policy.
Cause it's gonna change based on
Correct.
what the market rate is.
So
I
it's-
like Paul's idea. Paul has an excellent idea. If they're over 10 years, they get up a step. Do we have anybody over 15?
Yes.
Do you have anybody over 20? Yes. Do you have anybody over 25? More than likely. That's in your department.
All
Can
his
we
guys
take
were
that up
overpaid
separately?
anyways.
What's that?
All his guys were way overpaid. He's only got a couple steps left.
Cause I think Tim will need to know for the budget, so can we take it up separately, or, cause I'm not, unless I can get another version of this with all the different 10, 15, 25, how much it's gonna cost, I'm not voting for it, so. Can we take it up separately, so we know that this is what's gonna go into the budget we're about to work on,
Tim?
or
Well, what is it exactly we're doing?
all the things they're talking about is gonna cost money, so.
Well, no, I'm just as far as what the exact, like, change would be.
So if I understand you, we approve this, we can add or amend with Patrick's suggestion after we get the cost.
And what is that? I'm just,
We're asking you, we don't know what that cost
no,
is.
what is the change, I guess?
We would
Clarify
have
that,
to
so I
direct
can-
him to tell him what we wanna do, then he would go.
Correct.
Bring up the numbers.
So what
How
was
about
it?
treat an employee as if they were starting, like, their years of, in that position though, right? It's, cause it's, if it's the fire chief, it's how many years they've been the fire chief.
Mhm.
Right. And then just place them, assuming like that they started at a 1 on year 1 and then move them with their years of experience.
Yeah, well, we
And then
can,
is that-
I think what Paul's idea was if they're at 10, they would just go up 1 step.
Basically, you're saying, okay,
Award,
so you're basically saying we're gonna determine like a years of service in a job.
Correct.
Or the city, job.
With the job.
That we're gonna say, in this case it was 10, that anyone that's been in their position for 10 years, we would just when
Or
we place
one
them in the
step.
schedule, it'd be closest to their current hourly rate without taking less, and then we would just move on
One step per
from there.
step. Yep.
Is that
Yes.
how I'm
But
understanding?
what if
Yes.
they're already at like 16?
Well, I mean, well then,
Then they're over.
There isn't anybody in here that says that my group does that.
Yeah.
Oh, but we're
I
not
mean,
just
it's the
doing your
whole-
group though.
I don't care
Right?
about anybody.
Well, 16's the end, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's
But
it.
50.
I think
But-
what we should do is just pass this, and then we could get together with the department heads, because I would also like Kyle's involvement and Joe's involvement on it, just to, just so that, and if they don't wanna be involved, I don't know why they wouldn't, but I'm pretty sure they would for their employees, that, and maybe, we come up with a better idea than, but I think that's a fantastic idea. So,
Okay, so right now, there's a motion on the floor to discuss and consider for approval, sorry about that, I skipped one ahead. Discuss and consider for approval, new wage scale to be effective January 1st, 2024, contingent upon budget approval. And I made that motion, is there a second?
I already
Jake
seconded
seconded
Okay,
it.
there's a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Yeah,
Okay.
okay, now item number 4.
Nothing?
Nothing.
No.
Okay,
Status quo at the moment.
okay.
Back to the budget.
Okay. Discuss and consider for approval, making permanent the current trial period of City Hall hours of Monday through Thursday, 8 AM to 4:30 PM, and Friday, 8 AM to 12 PM. Pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I wasn't here when this went into place, so if anybody wants to give me some background.
Yep, sure. So, we went to this will be 6 months, it's set to expire, November 4th of this year. And it was talked about, let's just do the trial period as is what Marshfield did. We had learned what Marshfield had done, for this, and so far, we were asked to keep track of negative comments or questions, concerns, comments. To everybody I've talked to, we have yet to receive any for being closed at noon on Fridays. The employees, find it as those that want to utilize that work schedule, find it as a huge, benefit, kind of a morale booster. They like working their longer days, Monday through Thursday, and then getting out at noon, or the doors close at noon, they might work till 1:30. Some of them like their quiet time from noon to 1:30, where they can do catch-up work, clean up the end of their week, and then they roll in. So, what we're looking to do here is just to make this a non-trial period and make these permanent City Hall hours going forward.
So everybody's putting in their 40,
Yep.
and then we're closing City Hall at noon. So they're staying late on the days.
Or they're working through their lunch.
If they need to make up the hours, yes. I have a couple that do that. Or in our department, we do it frequently. We're normally here past 12 o'clock on a Friday. Nice part is we're not there till 4:30. Cause if you look, the traffic here, the call volume and the traffic after 12 o'clock, technically after 11 o'clock here on a Friday, there's probably less than, I think we normally have 35 people in the building during the week. There's probably less than 15 here on a Friday afternoon, employee-wise.
When you say call traffic, are you talking about citizens calling City Hall?
Correct. This is going back to prior to last spring when we were doing the research for it. It was implemented in May of 2023. And we've had a few requests from employees because they're excited about it. And they were the ones to ask, so we said, well, we'll actually put it on the agenda a month early because they want to see it continue. So then I went out and talked to some
Sure
department
they
heads.
do, right? Yeah.
I mean, they're still, they're
I
hitting their
know
40.
your work employees, I'm thinking citizens, it's about 4 hours less than that, so.
Yep.
But if they're paying their city, or if we're paying the city employees, and they're getting their work in, I don't mind City Hall closing at noon. I mean, it even reflects it when you look at it online, and then we have our older population if they're, you know, it's also on the door.
Yep.
So it's not like it's not known, but how are you making sure that everybody's working 40 hours? Especially if they're salaried, because everybody could work through lunch, but. how do you-
Salaried employees aren't required by law to work 40 hours.
I know, but if
They have to
we
report their
kept
time.
City
But
Hall
they have to
open.
record their time.
Yeah, if we kept City Hall open.
And there, with our
Does it-
electronic timekeeping system, I mean, so we know when employees are here, when they're gone, so, or if they have their sick time, or if they, you know, so, within my department, they're very good just about communicating, but it's tracked in Munis, and it's like, okay, well, they're short on their hours worked, and, okay, yep, they worked 9.5 on or they worked, what is a normal Friday, 4 hours? Okay, they worked 5.5 hours on Friday because they didn't hit their 40 till Friday at 1:30.
So it flexes. Because if everybody worked 8 to 4:30 and took a half-hour lunch,
You're not hitting 40.
no, they're at 32, and then there's a 4-hour day on Friday for 36.
Right. So they gotta expand their days or work
Is
longer.
this
on-
working from home? Is this
There are,
working
well,
till 5:30 Monday through Thursday? What's happening? Huh?
Or start early.
Started early?
Yep. It's all based on, and department head approval. So not everybody can just come and go and say that's good, you know, it does give the employees more flexibility to suit their work schedule, as we saw as a, no cost benefit to the, really dollar wise, okay? We did talk about the service aspect. Now, there have been appointments that have been made. I've had people call me saying, I wanna come in and drop off an application for XYZ position, but I can't get there till 12:45. Okay, doors will be locked, I'll meet you at the front, we'll come up. Kyle Kearns has had employees, Paul's had employees, or citizens, where they need to get into the building after 12 o'clock, and by appointment, or if we know they're coming, we're gonna help them out.
And we do have a remote work policy in the city that, you know, but it's 2 days, you know, that you can work remote out of your week, and, but they don't work extra remote. My expectations is, if City Hall's open, the offices have to be open. And so offices are all covered during City Hall hours, during open hours. And then it's just a matter of an employee, we might be only open 36 hours to the public, but they're still required to put in that other 4 hours. Whether it be come in early, you work through your lunch, we have people that will eat lunch at their desk and keep working, or they'll stay later, or there's people on Saturday that will stay, you know, a couple hours and work. There's always work to do, whether or not you
And
have
then
somebody standing in front of you.
Some of them come to me, but you're tracking all this in Munis is what you're saying?
Yep.
So everybody's getting their timing, cause I mean, we are taking, I understand why the employees want it, I mean, I think it's a really good policy and, makes it definitely a better place to work, but we are taking 4 hours access away from citizens, so,
Yep.
I just, as long as the taxpayers are getting what they're paying city employees to do for, or whatever the expectation is there, I'm fine with it, but I just wanted to make sure and ask those questions that it is.
Absolutely.
That it is being tracked, we're not just doing 36-hour weeks.
No,
Yeah.
No.
And there's times when the city clerk needs to be open till 5, so
Yep.
those days she'll remain open till 5. And tax collection season, you know, they're being cognizant of those type of things. Like on a Friday, if it's the last Friday, they'll stay open all day, and then they'll just take 4 hours off somewhere else, or that's their whole 40, and they won't adjust their schedules that week.
And that was one of the big questions that I believe it was Alderperson Rayon, and the mayor himself, when we looked at going to this, was number one is citizen feedback input and tracking of calls on Fridays and traffic, and then how many complaints. And like I said, we're going up on 6 months in November, and I have yet to receive a complaint.
Me either.
And neither does the two in my office, nor the mayor or Emily, so.
My phone doesn't even ring on Fridays at the time.
So we wanted to start this after the last tax season, and so that there wouldn't be any notices, you know, to people. I'm just wondering if it would be a good idea to run through a taxes season, you know, put this on for another 6-month trial period, so that we run through the tax season and see if we have any complaints, and then 6 months if it's.
I know Tim isn't here, but I'm sure, has Tim, I mean, he must have thought about this, put a plan together already, yes or no?
So we had the third installment as part of this, so obviously it's probably the slowest installment period. And as far as I've heard, they had no issues, but it's that first installment that's the really busy one. And I guess, you know, having a conversation with Tim on that first installment, if they're looking at that Friday, if that's what they plan to do on that Friday, is a good question.
I'm just wondering if we should just extend it for 6 months,
Yeah.
and then in 6 months, if we haven't had any complaints from the citizens, then we could make it permanent.
Here's the thing with trial periods though, I mean, we could make it permanent and undo it in 6 months. So it's kinda, I'm kinda like, on trials, cause it's just gonna come back and then we're gonna decide whether to make it permanent on again. If it doesn't work, we can just undo it.
Yeah, well, we haven't been through tax season, and that's my point. That's
Yeah.
it.
But it's still gonna be 6 months of doing it through a tax season. And with the other 6 months, we know what it's like from the 6 months we just did. So a trial and making it permanent, you're going through tax season either way. I don't know. We know what the other 6 months look like, cause we just did it.
6 months won't get us through taxes.
Well, it'll be 7 months. They brought it a month early, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
October, November, December, January.
So that will get us through then.
They'll get through as first installment, yeah.
I'm okay with that. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, then,
Well, if we get a lot of complaints, then
right.
we can go back, or maybe we do it for the summertime, cause that's when people are on vacation anyways, and they would wanna leave early on Fridays.
You know, the campers like that.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's the worst idea to do this 6 more months to get us through a tax, and I just don't think that's
It
the worst
doesn't,
ideal.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't
It's 6 of
hurt.
one and half a dozen of another, right?
Right.
Just be.
What-
People are planning their vacations and for the summer though, then they're gonna wait until
Oh, right.
June or July, you know, but, I mean, I guess either way,
Well,
you could decide to change it even if it's permanent, so.
Wouldn't they just take PTO
Yeah.
or something?
We could do a year, because the summer worked out fine,
Mhm.
right? We didn't have any problem with the summer. So we could just do a year from now, or we could make it permanent.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to make it for 1 year, to review after a year.
You're the one that brought this up.
Because we
You
don't
brought
need,
this up.
we don't need trial periods, we can put it in place and undo it, we're the legislative body, we just don't need this, we don't. I
I'll
think
second it.
let's just do it permanent, and if it doesn't work, we'll undo it.
Ring the bell.
I'll second Patrick's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Yes.
Alright,
Opposed? Ayes have it.
So when's it, 1 year from what? The 6 month deadline or the year from now?
A year from now.
Okay.
1 year from,
Today.
council.
Well, council.
passed.
oh, then I changed my vote.
Item number 5, discuss and
Oh,
consider
there's-
consider for approval proposed changes to the CDL policy.
Thank you.
Bye, Sue, thanks.
See attached policy. This is Paul or Ryan?
Yeah, I'll let Paul, so we had approved, I'll let Paul speak to it after I give him a quick precursor. We had approved the CDL policy, I believe, 2 years ago, and, which includes new employees in DPW that are required to get a CDL. We pay for that for Class B, and now we're looking to include the Class A. And I'll let Paul explain as to why that would
So
be
we're, so
perfect.
we've been taking a look at it based off of kind of longevity and things like that. Our staff right now, because I'm not closing it all the way. Dennis, come see my face.
What makes
But-
you-
Open the door back up there.
Yeah.
Well, could've went home for this, right?
Right? You left that one wide open, sorry. I couldn't think.
Anyways, so we're just looking at, we're gonna have issues in the future because the number of people that we have with Class A CDLs is less than what we have for Class Bs. And so we have people that are in jobs that it would be better if they had Class As. And so speaking with our people that we send them to training with, they would be willing to train them. You know, right now it's 4-week training if you have nothing. If they already have Class B, they're willing to train them for 1 week. to get them to their Class A. And so, just looking at our, currently we have 5 truck drivers, and only 2 of those 5 truck drivers have Class As. And back to the union days, we used to require at least 50%, which obviously you can't do 50% of 3 or of 5, so we always required 3. And so we're just looking at, longevity piece of it, looking at the future. We're gonna have the shortage of people that have Class A. We move our own equipment when you have a Class A and stuff like that. And so, currently we have 2 people budgeted to send to the training to go from a Class B to a Class A. That's in the budget. If that gets pulled out, obviously, we're not in the need of it right now. More 4 or 5 years we're in the need of it, so we just want to be prepared for that point to train our staff to be able to do their jobs properly.
Questions or comments? Patrick?
I just had one question. In the policy, it stated that they have to get a CDL license within 12 months. And why not make that, you have to get a Class A CDL license? Why not put that in the policy?
Well, the biggest issue is that you go from losing them, for a week to losing them for a month, and plus we only pay for 40 hours. The other piece of it is that my personal opinion is that would be somewhat foolish, because I may come in as a common laborer and have no desire to drive truck my whole entire career. If I require him to get a Class A, yes, he's prepared for it, but he's never gonna wanna take that job path. I just simply wanna take and train people that wanna be truck drivers, and maybe they don't have the skill set to be an equipment operator or something like that, but that's what their career path they wanna be is a truck driver. I wanna train those people, because in essence, we could be spending money that we don't need to spend.
Okay, that was excellent answer. That answered my question. I'll make a motion to approve proposed changes to the CDL policy.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to approve changes to the CDL policy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 6, adjournment. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Meeting adjourned at 5:03 PM.